Welcome in, people, and welcome back. My name is Jeremy Toms, host of the Big Law Capitalist podcast, and I am so excited to see you, so excited to have you. Today's episode is beyond inspirational. We have Chris Mladenovic. He is the Chief Operating Officer of ProspHire, and he is doing crazy things in investing. He's also building a monster business. But the tips and insights he has from those positions, right, from the fact that he's been able to do so much at such a young age, I think will not only be helpful, but incredibly motivational and encouraging for investors out there who are just getting started and those who have been getting after it for a while now. I know for me, he's a personal friend, and he has been one of the biggest reasons why I've just gone, so hard at investing and just, sort of supercharged my approach to not only investing, but to life in general. So I'm super excited for the episode. I don't want to take up any more time because you need to hear this. Make sure you stick around for the last 2 minutes of the episode. We have a visual aid, which I feel like we never have. Anybody who's listening to this in a car, make sure you check out our YouTube channel, Big Law Capitalist Podcast YouTube channel, to hear and see what Chris has to offer as far as insights, tips, and just a way to maximize your happiness as you kind of go through this thing we call life. So thanks everybody for joining. I want to dive into it. All right, let's go. Chris, great to have you, man. First off, thank you so much for joining us. I know how busy you are. I've seen firsthand how busy you are, how big of a deal you are. So I appreciate you jumping on, man.
Well, not a big deal, but thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here. I think what you're doing is great. I love where this show's going, and I'm just honored to be a guest. So thank you.
Man, we're honored to have you. So I appreciate that. You're too kind. I gave a brief introduction of who you are, but before we dive super deep, I want to make sure that we introduce you to the people, right? So kind of give us a quick background as far as who you are, where you're from, then we can kind of dive in from there.
Okay, well, hello people. My name's Chris Mladenovic, and I live in Cranberry with my wife, and we have a little pet pig. Her name's Nola. She's going to be 11 here in May. And I lived in Pittsburgh my whole life, and grew up in Irwin. I went to Norwin High School and then Duquesne University, and planted some roots up in Cranberry. So that's me in the big picture.
Fantastic, man. Wait, I didn't realize. So you're from Pittsburgh. I had no idea. I didn't know that.
Yeah, born and raised. I get around a lot. I spent my whole, professional career in consulting, professional services. So I've traveled a lot, kind of pseudo lived in a variety of cities. But I got some roots here. I don't really see moving anytime soon, and maybe in the future. But my family's here, so I stick around.
So you mentioned consulting. So big picture, just so everybody can kind of have an idea. What do you do now?
See, if you ask my parents, they'll say I fix computers, lovingly. When somebody says, well, you're in consulting, what do you do? It's probably one of the hardest questions to answer. But in short, I help very large companies through deal with a lot of their operational challenges. And my business now, ProspHire, we focus on the healthcare industry, and we primarily focus on the insurance segment. So we help the insurance companies through all the change that they've got to navigate through. There's a lot of M&A activity now. There's a lot of government regulation that needs complied with. There's a lot of transformation that's happening. So they call on us to help them through a lot of those big things.
Yeah, and I can't imagine how busy you have to be at this point. I mean, that industry is consistently moving, which, good for you, right? Because you can, that's revenue, right? But at the same time, you guys got to be just crazy busy right now.
Healthcare is always a fast moving industry. I think it's an industry that's, 5 maybe more years behind the curve and getting caught up on things. It's hard to invoke change in the business with all the regulations and whatnot. It's a very needed service that's provided.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody needs healthcare. So right. It's a good industry to be in. I used to tell people it was recession proof, and then we went through COVID. But I now say it's recession insulated.
Right.
because there's a lot of movement in that space, and just a lot of great things going on that we're able to participate in.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Hey, so I've never heard the true sort of origin story of ProspHire and how you started the business, how you got into it. What's so like, let's rewind a little bit to back in your 20s, right? Like what was it like, you know, you have an idea of what you want to do and then growing this, this monster of a company where you guys are cranking out crazy money now. Like what uh what was it like sort of getting started?
Very difficult. It's not easy to sell professional services. I think that selling intangible value, stuff you can't actually touch, is challenging because when you're talking to a customer or client, you have to work with them to really visualize and create a vision of what's going to be. And sometimes that's not easy to do when you can't touch and feel a product or log into some type of thing. You're relying on the advice and the return on investment is going to be there after some time or whatever the project is. Um, I've been I graduated Duquesne and joined a wonderful global firm, Deloitte
Mm,
Consulting. I got my start there. Learned a lot. I spent 7 years there, and I'll tell you, a year in consulting is probably worth two in experience. So I got some great experience there. And over the years, I just picked up a lot of uh, different relationships, different experiences, different perspectives on life. I had a lot of people ask me, when are you going to start your own firm?
mm.
Truth be told, ProspHire is my fourth business. I
Oh
actually
wow.
had probably three businesses fail before that, and in those failures, I didn't really consider them failures. I consider them more lessons. I learned what I
Love
needed
that.
to do correctly, and the biggest lesson out of all those uh, failures, if you will, is you have to, whatever capital expenditure you go into, you need to go in with both feet. The businesses I failed in, I tried to do it off the side of my desk or with one foot in. And when I started ProspHire, there was no plan B. There was no failure. It was going to work, or I was going to make it work. So
Right.
I started that business in 2015. I was, I think, 31 or 32 at the time, and had a good set of relationships. And that's honestly what a business like this is built on: is strong relationships with clients and colleagues to do a good job.
Early on, were the clients just? I mean, I guess essentially you just said it right. Like they were just relationships you had sort of generated over the commencement of your earlier career. As you started to grow it and you had to build a team. What was that like? Right, like 'cause you were young. I mean, like 32. I'm 32 now. Like, and I'm like you're young. You have experience, but at the same time, it's like convincing other people of that's one thing, and then also convincing your team to trust your judgment another. So, what was that like?
Well, at the time I started, I did have some really great relationships that were really people that I worked with in the trenches, shoulder to shoulder. I was working hard with them, and one of the things I did that I think that I would convey to other entrepreneurs is to tell the world what you want to do. A lot of people start their business and they're afraid of being judged. And I don't know if I wasn't afraid, but I certainly told the world what I wanted to do. And if you tell people what your goal is and what you want to do, they'll help you get there. Human beings, I believe, are naturally wired to help each other, and
Mhm.
I think that's one thing that we did well. I think that it was tremendously difficult to convince clients to take a chance on me, and I'm grateful for the clients that did. They're still clients today, and I'll tell you what was even harder was convincing people to work for our firm. First it starts out with begging the first people to join, and then hey, come join our three-person firm.
Right.
Everything's gonna be great. And now we're at a point where almost 100 people, and people
Wow.
are banging down the door. I don't get to meet everybody that applies. And it's just I'm just tremendously grateful to have had a wonderful leadership team to help kind of build the firm into what it is today.
That's unbelievable. Wow, that's I mean, and that's a short period of time too, right? You're talking 7 years, right?
Yeah, we'll be 8 in April 4th, and 7 years. We went from zero to we'll crest probably 18 million this year, and it's just been fantastic. The first 2 years were incredibly challenging. Not many people know this, and I think it's something that deserves sharing. We weren't having a great first year. It was a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of hurdles, a lot of figuring out how to make payroll. In fact, I signed up for Uber and went through that whole rigmarole and almost did it, but I never took the first drive and never took
Oh,
the
as a
first
driver, yeah,
drive.
yeah. Wow.
And because, like I said, it wouldn't have been with both of my feet. And
Right.
I said, you know what? If I start doing this Uber thing, it's going to distract me.
Man, and you know what's I'm so glad you brought that up, and I'm so glad you dove into that because honestly, I think a lot of value comes from the early stage of it, right? Like, if I had to, if I'm thinking of a movie, like, think about, like Scarface, right? Like, just think about that, not take the drug empire out of it, but, when he's starting out, he's at the bottom of the barrel, like he's scratching his way up. And a lot of that story, the cool parts, like the sort of the ascent, that like upward sort of I'm working my way up. Now, granted, that different world, that's not what you're doing. But at the same time, I think it's akin to sort of what you're talking about, like the failures early on, the learning experiences, what you have to go through, the grind. I think that creates what then is considered, a masterpiece now, right? Like, that sort of creates that work ethic. It creates that bond with your team, and it also creates that drive to keep it going because you know where you come from. So let's talk about those early years because I think, like I said, there's a ton of value in that. Were there any like early lessons you learned building a business that, I mean, can sort of be expounded upon so other people can learn from them, from you?
Yeah, I think the recipe for a good business is hiring the right people and getting out of their way. A
Mm,
lot, especially in my type of business, the number one, in my opinion, mistake I see people do is they they go and take their winnings and they spend them. One thing I did was we took our winnings and I did my best to replace myself as quickly as possible. So I think that is probably one of the biggest lessons that, or one of the best things I did early on in the business was find somebody to replace myself so that I could get out in front of the business and work on the business instead of in the business. Because to start a business, you have to be the master of your craft, and you tend to want to work in the business and do the things that the business does. And to some extent, in fact, to every extent, you have to. But the faster you can replicate yourself, duplicate your DNA, you have to make sure that your DNA replicates perfectly. And that's super important. You have to be very conscious of who you let in the organization, and then you have to
mm,
be very deliberate about if somebody doesn't fit into the organization, getting them out.
right.
That's not an easy thing to do, but I always tell people, uh, you know, especially if I'm working with friends or something, I'm always going to pick the business, and
Mm.
that's just sometimes a hard thing to do, but it's courageous and necessary for the business.
It's absolutely admirable, that you can do that, right? Because that is tough, right? If I had to give it any sort of comparison to real estate, it's at the end of the day, like it's all a numbers game, right? But I mean, it's more than that. It's there are feelings involved. I mean, real estate, it's literally a property. So I mean, there aren't properties, aren't feelings. But for you, I mean, it's a bigger deal, right? Because it's not just a numbers game. These are people, these are families. People's livelihoods count on that, and so that's incredibly difficult. I can't even imagine the early years, right? How stressful that had to be on you when the buck stops with you. decisions that come down from you, consequences, which I'm sure over time have grown even more consequential, right? And so the fact that you've grown it the way you have, in the speed that you've done it is unbelievable, man. I tip of the cap, like that. You've done just an unbelievable job. But what's wild is how we actually got introduced. Was through a friend who's actually been on the show, John Wappler. Um, he was a great guest. Thanks again, John, by the way, if you're watching this. So what's funny is when we got introduced, I was immediately taken by you, man. You have an unbelievable personality. You're incredibly smart, but you're just overall, like, you're worldly. You've dealt with a lot of stuff, right? Like, I mean, just not only just in business, but in life in general. You've had like insights on things that I never even thought about until I met you. Um, and so one of those things that I think I gleaned from you, right, even just early on, was your approach to how you leverage your business and how you involve yourself in real estate. What was it once you sort of got to the point? I know real estate's been was in your background previously, but we'll dive into that. But what made it such an important part of your overall investment portfolio? What was it about real estate that really got your interest?
Well, first of all, to all the viewers, I did not pay him to say that, but thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll pay you after this. Um, what I think real estate is fun. Number one, you shouldn't dabble in things that aren't fun or aren't interesting or you're not good at. And I'll talk about that later. But um, my capitalism started in real estate. I bought my first duplex when I was 20 years old. It was my first big purchase. In my 20s, I did a lot of flips and I did a lot of duplex leasing, and I found a lot of fun in it. I would buy them, fix them up. I would drag my wife. We would work a full day, and then 6 o'clock we'd go over to the house, grab some Subway, work work
With a Subway
until
sandwich.
11, 12 o'clock, and do it all over again. I think that I learned early on it was good for a lot of things. Number one, it produces cash flow.
Hmm.
Number two, it produces tremendous tax savings if you leverage the system correctly, and it builds wealth overall. More importantly, you can't jump into real estate, in my opinion, and become rich or wealthy overnight. It's a long game.
Hmm.
Um, these days, I'm more on the capital side. I just can't get on my knees anymore and lay tile. So I participate more in the deal structuring and the capital side of things, and
Hmm.
look for that return. It's good from a tax advantageous perspective. And one of the things that people don't really think about is diversification of your portfolio. You should have a substantial amount of your portfolio in real estate. That amounts to be debated, but I'm aiming for 20-25% of my
Yeah.
portfolio in real estate. So that's a little bit of my why I'm in real estate and how I got involved. But it's been tremendous to work with you, and I feel the same way about you in the real estate game. I'm just so impressed with what you're doing and what you've done, and to be where you're at your age is admirable and very impressive.
I appreciate that. I also didn't pay you to say that either. So thank you, sir. No, but I think that's absolutely right. I'll talk to partners and upper level associates who are attorneys, and what's cool about the industry is it's great money. You can create a great lifestyle, but a lot of times I think what gets lost in it is like that W-2 income at some point comes to an end. But if you haven't put yourself in a position where your money is working for you after the fact, I think that's where people run into an issue. And so a lot of people ask me questions about like, you know, what should they invest, allocation amounts. Not really, I don't try to dive into like, hey, here's what you should do. But what I do say is invest early, invest often, and reinvest. Because if you're not doing that, then what's it all for? It's not going to grow, right? Your wealth isn't going to grow
Mm.
quickly enough and sums that are going to make a substantial difference, right? Like I knew early on I need to invest and I need to recycle that money that's coming out of it immediately again. So right, that's how you compound your interest. But that's a really good point. I didn't realize you started so like real estate. Really, that was the first baby, right? That was the 20 years old. That was you were getting after it, man. Good for you.
Yeah, and I give credit to my dad. He pushed me into it, and because he did that for quite a bit, and I helped him on his houses, and he pushed me into the first purchase, and then I leveraged that for the second, and so on and so forth. And yeah, there's a lot of risk in it, and that's just the nature of the game. But you know, to your point, it's you if you want you got to have goals, right? You got to
Mhm.
kind of know where you want to land in life and what you want to do, and then you've got to figure out the delta to get there, whether it's capital or time, and capital leads to free time, and you got to have a plan to get there, and real estate can absolutely be a wonderful path to get there, especially if you go all in on it. I think about all the very successful entrepreneurs that they're they're either started in real estate or they're doing real estate.
Right. And you've done a great job at building assets, right? Like your holdings in your company, that's an asset. Your real estate portfolio asset, right? Like you're and not only that though, like I said earlier, you leverage your assets, which all you're doing there is essentially like you're just increasing your cash on cash, right? Like how much cash you outlaying versus the return you're getting back. You do a really good job of that. And I think that's a lesson that a lot of people don't necessarily learn unless you dabble in it at least. I mean, they may know about the general principle of that, but actively pursuing that, that's how you can make it a substantial return in a, fairly short period of time. But for you too, I think it's a really big deal that you truly understand and appreciate the tax side of things. And you understand and appreciate it at a level that like I can only hope to ever get to, right? Like some of the stuff you've told me in the past, I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even think about that. Whereas like you have, advisors and experts who are like, no, 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 that's how you should do this. One of them being obviously, leveraging your business and things like that. Like you're doing stuff that, I mean, the ultra wealthy are doing because you know that that's how that works, right? That's how the game works.
It's
Um,
a game. You gotta learn the game. I mean,
yep.
you the more you do it, the more you like. I do a lot of research. I do a lot of reading. I surround myself with people. I think that's another lesson. You are the sum of the five people you hang around with the most. And if you hang around with five wealthy people, you're going to be wealthy someday. If you
Mhm.
hang around with five uh, unambitious folks that have different priorities, you're probably going to end up like that.
Right.
So I think that's one thing that I really took to heart when I heard that advice. And I just surround myself with like people I want to be like and have similar goals.
Absolutely. And I think too, you're so that like sort of like thirst for knowledge, that's that's huge. I can tell for you because again, like you've done an incredible amount in your life, right? You've been incredibly successful at what you've done, but at the same time, every time I talk to you, you've learned something new, right? You're consistently experiencing new things that you then add to your sort of tool belt that you can use on a go forward basis. And so I find it, I mean, unbelievable that you've learned as much as you have. Also, side note, one of the things you learned how to do was fly a plane. You're you're a certified instructor and also a licensed pilot at this point.
Yeah, that's my passion. That's one of my whys. I started flying at a young age and really got serious back in 2012 and climbed my way up the ranks. And I don't do much instruction. I don't have a whole lot of time, but I can. And I fly a lot for business. Our business has an aircraft, which is another amazing asset to leverage to do different things for. And it just brings me so much joy to get in that plane and fly it, and I really even get more joy when I take somebody for a ride, especially children, and they see the magic and the beauty of flight. Once you get that taste, forever your eyes are skyward on doing it again. So that's truly my passion.
That that is, if you didn't know, you are my hero. Like that is unbelievable. Good for
I'm
you,
going to come
man.
on your
Like
show all the time. My
you have
head's
to.
not going to fit out the door.
Just please understand the Big Law Capitalist podcast would have you whenever, wherever, man. Like just come
once
on
a,
in.
once a week
Oh,
for my ego.
open invitation. No, that's huge. And again, you brought it back to the real, real point I was getting to, which is leveraging, right? Like you understand that, like, it's your business, it's Jet, and like that's how this game goes, right? Like it's like you said, it's like learning a game. My wife makes fun of me because a lot of times I do equate real estate to Monopoly, because once you get to the point where you're starting to use real estate like you would pieces on a board game, you've
Yep.
kind of gotten there, right? Like it becomes more fun to do the deals, right? It's no longer like stress, like like what's happening with this deal, what's happening with this house. It's all about growth. Like, all right, how can I use this plan to turn this into 3 additional properties or a portfolio or like a cash out refinance loan? How do I loop those funds into another deal? It becomes a constant game of like, how big can we go? Um, I'll be the first to tell you, I think I have astronomical goals, right? And I think anybody who does
You should.
is doing you're right, exactly, right? You should. One of those, like, reach for the stars, land on the moon. But I'm also very clear on my goals, because I think what people get lost in is like some goals can be dreams, right? But you should really try to focus and make sure those dreams are solidified enough that they become goals. And so
Yeah.
that's that's what's cool about that approach. But you clearly you have solidified, clarified things to a point where you've just taken it next level.
I'm just getting started.
I would print that out on the board and throw that up, because somebody like you saying that's what it means, right? The game never really ends. You just continue to level up at each stage.
Yeah.
But if you had to kind of bottle up, 3 characteristics that you think, and we don't have to make it a number, right? It can be whatever you want, 1, 5, whatever. But what would you say, like getting to your level, doing what you're able to do with your capabilities, what would you say is the most important thing for people to remember, or at least for aspiring entrepreneurs or investors to remember?
Well, I appreciate that question very much, and I thought about it a little bit, and I actually drew something for you.
Oh, there it is. There you go. Look at that. Success
So
equals.
I'll
Nice.
explain. I'll explain that, and for the people listening, I have 3 concentric circles that are overlapping, and there's a middle point where I have the little star there, and
Right.
I think success um, is defined a little bit differently by everyone. You could have financial success, you could have time success, you could have love success, you could have however you define it is how you define it.
Yep.
I define it as getting into the middle of these 3 things, and what these 3 circles are number 1 in life. You have to find something that you love and you're happy about.
Mm-hmm.
If you find something, and then the second thing, you have to find something that makes money. And then the third thing is you have to find something that you're good at.
Yep.
If you do something you love and it makes a lot of money, you probably don't like it.
Right.
Sorry. If you do something you love and it makes money, you might not be good at it.
Right.
If you do something you love and you're good at, it might not make a lot of money. And if you do something that you're really good at and makes a lot of money, which I see a lot of people do, they don't love it. But
Mm-hmm.
if you could find something that you love, makes a lot of money, and you're really good at, I think that's success. And for me, professional services, I love the business. I love creating a platform for people to be their best and be successful. I'm really good at it, I think, um, and it pays a lot of money. And then my flying, I've incorporated my passion for aviation into the business. I travel a lot for work, and I'm able to fly to the different client sites or different business meetings. So I've really created this environment for myself and for basically everyone on my team to achieve that if that's what they want to do. So that's, when thinking about that question about success, that's my definition.
I love it, man. I love it. That you hit it. You hit the home run, right? That's it. It's finding what you love and finding a way to make good money at it and then being good at it, So I first off, I've loved having you on the show. I can't thank you enough, man. Again, I know how busy you are, so thank you so much. I can't even describe how much I appreciate it. For all the viewers out there, if you want to reach out to Chris, we're gonna throw his information to the show notes. Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure, man. I want to jump off here because I want to let you get back to your wife, your job, pet pig. We'll catch up here soon, man. Thanks so much.
It was my honor. Thank you, and I can't wait to see where you go with this and everything you're working on. You're an incredible human being.
Thanks, man. Salute to you. Thanks so much. Be good. All right, we did it. Thank you so much for joining me for this week's episode. I really, really do appreciate it. Do me a big favor. If you want to be a part of the Big Law Capitalist community to stay up to date with all of our latest episodes, you gotta hit that subscribe button. Super important. But I can't thank you enough for joining me this week. I'll see you next time. Peace.